NBA, even if I don't necessarily have the actual skill yet to make it. The same thing happens in the National Football League. My goal is all about the do-re-mi. Maybe it's economic, how they grew up. They need it. They have to have it. And so the pressure is there. But still, regardless, it's going to be a long road. I remember this quote. He used to talk about it, say it all the time, about shortcuts. The path to success would be so much more crowded if so many people didn't get off looking for a shortcut. I feel like sometimes kids these days feel like I can take the shortcut and get there, even though if you get there taking the shortcut, you don't appreciate the journey. You ready for Inbounds and Out of Bounds, Sam? Are you going to help me today?
No, I'm not ready. Can you give me a few minutes?
All right, D-Cell, you got me. Let's get Inbounds and Out of Bounds.
Anything can happen in sports and often does. What's right, what's wrong, and who's just crazy? We decide. Inbounds and Out of Bounds now. With Tiki and Tierney.
All right, Sandra, I know you're actually ready. You were just trying to be facetious, and I jumped off on you and jumped right to D-Cell.
Do you think there's a chance I'd let D-Cell take my spot?
No, because you got to build your tape.
I got to build my tape. I got a lot of building to do. Starting from the very ground floor, your former quarterback, Eli Manning, is entering his 15th NFL season with a career completion percentage of just 59.8 and has never completed more than 63.1% of his passes. New head coach Pat Shurmur has an incredible track record with QBs, helping Sam Bradford complete 72% of his passes in 2 seasons with the Vikings, while Case Keenum jumped nearly 8 percentage points from his career average last year under Shurmur. Shurmur expects much of the same from Eli, telling the New York Post, quote, "I think he can get a career high. I think it's important that you get him in the high 60s, bordering on 70.
On 70?
70.
Wow.
Eli Manning will complete at least 68% of his passes this year.
Wow, I don't know where to go here. I mean, obviously I'm going to say Inbounds because he's my guy. He's my quarterback, my team. I love Pat Shurmur. I love what he's trying to do, and you've seen the success in previous years of him turning quarterbacks' completion percentage around. You know how that works? You know why it works? It's because he relies so heavily on the run game. Now, there's a little bit of a misnomer about completion percentage in the National Football League. Sometimes it's a stat that people just look at and they're like, oh, he's sub 60, he's terrible. And people will evaluate someone's career. But there are a lot of really good quarterbacks early on in their careers who didn't have high completion percentage. It was because of the nature of their sport. Bruce Arians is the captain of this. That's why Andrew Luck had such a low completion percentage in his first couple of years. It's why Ben Roethlisberger had such a low completion percentage in his first couple of years. They obviously evolved into different type systems, but Eli throws the ball down the field a lot, has a lot of big plays, and that's why the completion percentage is lower than most, because it's a lot of inefficient plays. I mean, but it's boom or bust. I'm going to say Inbounds here because I do think that what Coach Shurmur is going to focus on is the check down. Get the ball out of your hands quickly. Let your playmakers make those plays for you, whether it's Saquon Barkley or if his hamstring is too jacked up. He went back to practice today. Wayne Gallman, who had a really good preseason game last weekend, 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, where he bounced outside, went to the corner, 1 receiving, ran a little angle route inside. Coach Shurmur likes backs that can catch and be versatile out of the backfield. I think that helps Eli tremendously.
Are you in or are you out?
The Dallas Cowboys, staying in the NFC East, have lost 2 starting offensive linemen this preseason. Center Travis Frederick to Stingers and guard Zach Martin to a knee injury. That led the team to announce yesterday that they were shutting down quarterback Dak Prescott and running back Zeke Elliott for the remainder of the preseason. Inbounds, out of bounds. The Cowboys are making the right decision, shutting down Dak and Zeke for the last 2 weeks.
This is out of bounds for me. Not Zeke. I think Zeke can be fine managing the run game. But Dak Prescott does not have chemistry with wide receivers yet. Now, they may say that they do because they've been running around, and I always like to say it, in their underwear and past skeleton and looking good when nobody's actually trying to hit you. But with basically a new receiving core receiving core, without Des Bryant there, without Jason Witten there, most importantly, timing is so important for quarterbacks and wide receivers. And while Dak may be able to figure that out and while Linehan, their offensive coordinator, and Jason Garrett, their head coach, may say, well, we're going to be run heavy, and so the throws are going to be easier. I think it's more important for the wide receivers. Some of his young wide receivers are going to be put in different roles to see the ball coming off his hand to them, right? Quarterbacks have different release points and different ways of running an offense. So for him not to do that in live action, I think is a little bit of a mistake. I'm okay with Zeke sitting down, but Dak, I think you get some more burn before this preseason is over.
Are you in or are you out?
The Chicago Cubs had a busy day yesterday trading for National second baseman Daniel Murphy, announcing that Yu Darvish was done for the season due to a stress reaction in his elbow, and eventually losing 2-1 to the Tigers. It was their 5th straight game in which they scored only 1 run, and skipper Joe Madden doesn't have the answers for the lack of offense.
I don't want to start using the phrase, we're trying too hard, because we're trying too hard. We just back it off a little bit and go out there and play and have a good time and not try to press or be the guy that turns this thing around. Just work your at bat, do your job offensively, and move it on to the next guy. We're not doing that.
In adding Murphy while losing Darvish, the Cubs are a better team today than they were yesterday.
Addition by addition, but a subtraction type of thing going on, sounds like crazy. Look, Yu Darvish was having a little bit of a rough season. I'm trying to find his stats right now. It started 8 games, 40 innings so far, almost a 5 ERA, 4.95 ERA. He just is not the player that he was. So I'm saying inbounds for this one. Daniel Murphy has only played in about 600 or 60 games or so, but he's hitting over 300. I mean, Daniel Murphy's is a player, and in some regards, being banged up for a little bit of the season, but now fully healthy, I think it's good for him, and it's good for the Cubs. They've had a struggle, as Coach Madden or Skip Madden was saying, about hitting. They just can't find their answer. I think he can be an answer, even if it's a temporary boost and some hitting prowess. It's important. And obviously, Yu Darvish is in a place where, a lot of pitchers don't like to be. They don't have an answer, and they can't figure out an answer, and then health starts to get into the way. So inbounds on this one.
Are you in or are you out?
As we discussed yesterday with Michael Rappaport in studio, who is hilarious, the Big Three Championship tips off on Friday, and last night, the league announced Nancy Lieberman as their Coach of the Year. Lieberman, a legend in the women's game, also serves as an assistant on the Kings staff out in Sacramento. The Spurs' Becky Hammond, as we well know, led the Spurs Summer League team to a title in 2015 and was interviewed this offseason for the head coaching job for the Bucks. Inbounds, out of bounds. A woman will be an NBA head coach in the next 5 years.
This was a good one, because you start to see some organizations making decisions on head coaching on people we don't know yet. Just like down in Atlanta, the head coach, Pierce, who we talked to on the show, but before we talked to him, I didn't really know who he was. And so I'm going to say out of bounds, even though I hope I'm wrong, and I could be very wrong here, because it's not about going the retread route anymore. We see this when you talk about, some of these older head coaches. Stan Van Gundy's one who, is talking about retirement or thinking about retirement, not because he doesn't think he can coach anymore, but he just doesn't see the next path. And as the trend starts to move, as that ceiling is already broken through with female coaches in basketball, top assistants, etc., I think eventually you're going to see him break through and be a head coach, even if it's one of those. We're in a rebuild year. We're just trying to see what we have here. Let's do this. I don't think it's going to happen in the next 5 years, though. But I hope I'm wrong. Out of bounds, but reluctantly so.
Are you in or are you out?
Last one, the college football season begins next week, with most of the main teams playing in 2 weeks, but many QB situations and questions still remain. In Tuscaloosa, Nick Saban has yet to announce his starting quarterback between Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts.
Wow, nice.
Tua Tagovailoa.
You said it so nicely, you got hung up on Jalen Hurts.
I know, seriously. Thought the easier one. I was thinking a whole time, Tua Tagovailoa.
All you got to think is tongue. If you just think tongue, it's easy to say his name.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot easier, but you still get caught up in all that junk.
Just say tongue, and then the rest just flows out, and then you don't have to read it. That's what I do.
So Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts are still waiting for the decision from Nick Saban, while USC's Clay Helton won't name a starter until next week, right before their game versus UNLV. In other QB competitions like Texas and Michigan, they've already named their Week 1 starters. Inbounds, out of bounds, waiting until the last moment to name your starting quarterback is a smart decision.
It's inbounds because it gives you a competitive advantage. If there's a real belief that it could be either guy, you got a game plan for both guys. If you're Alabama's opponent, who they playing Week 1? I forget who Alabama's playing Week 1, but Jalen Hurts is a significantly different type of threat than Tua Tagovailoa. He throws the ball so much better. He's athletic also, and so there's just different threat when Tagovailoa is in the game. But when Jalen Hurts is in the game, you kind of know they're not chucking the ball downfield. It's interesting. I think against Louisville, their defensive coordinator, that's who they're playing Week 1. Thanks for finding that, Sam. Louisville, their defensive coordinator's got to be racking his brain. You know you're going to have All-Americans and, superstars coming at you, and you don't even know what the game plan potentially could be because you don't know who's starting at quarterback. So I think it's inbounds for sure. Kyler Murray, by the way, even though we kind of expected this, has also been announced as the starting quarterback for the University of Oklahoma Sooners. I'll be at that game, by the way. I'm doing that game for Compass Media. Me and Greg Papa. He'll be on play-by-play. I'll be an analyst. So Week 1, I'll be out in Norman, my first trip to Oklahoma. That one was announced too. Most of them are announced. But I think unique situations like what's happening in Alabama, it's such a competitive advantage, it's worth holding on to.
Tune in next time for another edition of Inbounds or Out of Bounds with Tiki and Tierney.
Now, we talk about quarterback situations that have already been decided. There was one that Sam mentioned, Texas, between Sam Ehlinger and Shane Buechele, which was dicey. I mean, both those guys played a lot last year. I think it was like 6 games and 7 games. I can't remember which one played more or the other. But Tom Herman, the head coach down there, has made the decision to start Ehlinger as the season goes. But it's interesting, his comments. He said, we're going to start Sam, but Shane Buechele might get some play as well. And I've seen this over the last couple of years with Texas, where they interchange quarterbacks and they throw in a situational guy because he's more athletic and can run better. And it gets really hard to win consistently that way. One, because your game planning is all over the place, whether, depth of knowledge of the playbook, et cetera, but also for teammates. It's just hard to be, say, a good wide receiver when you have 2 different quarterbacks throwing you the ball. There's 2 different voices in the huddle. And we all know the situation in Austin for University of Texas. Charlie Strong gets fired after a couple of years because they don't feel like the program is heading in the right direction. But Tom Herman comes in, and he's supposed to be the savior. And people are buying it, man, right? The media, for 2 years in a row, the AP media poll, 2 years in a row, they're ranked 23rd. We know what happened last year, ranked 23rd. The expectation was through the roof. They lose to Maryland in Week 1. I think they gave up 51 points. So I want to say it was 51 to 41 or something like that. So the expectation is hard to meet when you have an uncertainty at quarterback. So I like Tom Herman. We had him on before when he was at Houston. I like his message. I like his mentality. But he's got some expectations to meet this year. And I'm not sure if the flip-flopping of quarterbacks is going to bode well down there at Texas. They do have a lot of talent. They really do. But I worry about coaches who are uncertain about quarterbacks. What do you got, Sam?
Do you think it's fair for a guy like Shane Buechele who went to that school?
He had an injury.
Sure, but he doesn't play to Herman's style. So Herman likes those running quarterbacks. He likes those dual-threat guys. But here comes this top-ranked quarterback who didn't agree to play for Tom Herman, and now he's kind of screwed because he doesn't fit his offense, and now he can't leave.
I know.
So, isn't this again going back to that whole situation? But he has to sit out of here.
He could or create a mitigating circumstance, a documented mitigated circumstance, and be somewhere else. See, this is the issue, right? And it's not Buechele's fault. It's not Tom Herman's fault. It's just the circumstance. But at the end of the day, he's got to start winning significantly. 7-6 last year, Texas was, after starting the season. Preseason, ranked 23rd in the AP poll. The AP poll means nothing to the college football playoff system, by the way. Randall Cobb, one of the steady guys for the Green Bay Packers, is going to join us at the top of the next hour. And then also training camp, 2-a-days, our 6th annual one with the Cleveland Browns. Duke Johnson of the, where, T?